Hello, good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started because I want to keep us on time with this webinar and allow enough time for you all to have questions if we're at the end. So my name is Justin Harris. I am an SBA career advisor at American University and within the Career Center. And the focus of this session today, as the title says, is going to be on federal resumes and USA jobs. And my kind of goal and vision with this webinar is to really help each of you who are here really kind of get started on that path to applying for federal jobs and or internships. Some of you may have worked in the federal government before in some capacity. Maybe you haven't ever had that experience, which is usually the case because while you're attending this session. But I really want to make sure you're all getting started with some key strategies and tips because we really only have an hour. And there's a lot to kind of process and think about with the federal government. I'm going to really be discussing some key steps and strategies that I believe really will be the most helpful for those seeking federal opportunities, especially those within executive branch agencies and departments, with the exception of the intelligence agencies. And part of the reason why we're not covering intelligence agencies is they aren't required to post in USA Jobs. Just the nature of that work, they kind of have their own hiring process, and it can be quite different. So we're not really going to cover federal intelligence agencies, but any other executive branch agency or department is going to be kind of focused on and talked about here. I welcome you all to put questions in the chat or the Q&A, and I will try to answer those as best I can at the end of the session. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so for today's discussion, as I already kind of mentioned, these are kind of the key learning objectives and things that I want us to go over today. So what are those key steps to really writing a federal resume? It's a very, very important document, which I'll tell you a little bit more why that's so important, but that is a key kind of strategy and kind of piece that you want to have put together in your application. What is USA Jobs and how you use it effectively in your federal job search? How to set up searches in USA Jobs. There's a lot of different ways to kind of filter and see different positions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then also going about with evaluating the job opportunity announcement, or JOA for short. Federal government uses a lot of acronyms and short terms for things. So if I'm referring to JOA, just know that that's the job opportunity announcement or the posting is what I'm referring to. So the federal resume, why is it such an important document? Out of everything you do in the application process, this is going to be really critical. For most of you, it will potentially be your first impression that you're able to make with an employer, especially if you haven't had any kind of prior interactions with a hiring agency, which honestly now may be very likely due to the past year and a half of not having the opportunity to have as much in-person communication and networking that you may have normally done when we were in a pandemic. So it's that opportunity for you to make that first impression with the employer. It's the primary way that you as an applicant can communicate your education, skills, and experience. Okay, out of everything you'll do, this is that way that you're going to be able to get across, hey, this is why I'm qualified. This is how I'm meeting the qualifications of the position. And within the federal government hiring, your resume actually is your application. You may have applied to other types of private employers before, and they have a portal where you go and apply, and you have a lot of other things that you might have to fill out as part of the application. But with the federal government, your resume is your application. There's no other kind of standard documents that would be part of your application. The resume is that. So first, let's talk kind of about some of the formatting within the length. And I'll start with the question of length because usually that's the thing that most people are asking me about first. You know, how long should a federal resume be? Do I have limitations on it? Well, with a federal resume, it's not limited to that traditional 1 or 2 pages as some of you may have experienced with other employers that are maybe in the private sector, whether it be nonprofit or public employers. For-profit employers. So you don't have that same limitation. I've seen federal resumes be 4 or 5 pages before, and some of them be 10 pages. A lot of that kind of depends on your experience and qualification that you have that's relevant for that particular role. So it can really vary, but you're not limited, and you can be a lot more detailed when describing and talking about the key kind of qualifications, skills, and experiences that you will bring to the table. Some of the other aspects of formatting, which are kind of similar to a regular type of resume that you may send into another employer, still using kind of standard fonts, nothing too crazy. You want to keep it simple, keep it clean, easy for someone to read. Usually you're sticking within a 10 to 12 size for font, with usually not big margin sizes, usually smaller margins, 1/2 inch to 1 inch margin at most. Typically, they're not going to have any color. They're going to be kind of simple, traditional, black and white. And then the content is really what matters in a sense of these. So not necessarily having the best graphically designed format. That's not necessarily what's going to stand out. And on a federal resume, that's not necessarily the format that it's going to be in. The content and your experience and what you're showing really is what makes the difference for you with employers and getting you to that next step in that application process. Okay. For your job experiences. And so when I say job experiences, I'm including internships or student organizations or whatever other experience you might have coming to the table. But with that, you still want to do it in reverse chronological order. So you're trying to list your experiences in which you're providing the most ones that have the most relevant experience first, most recent experience, first, and then you're working your way down within your experience section to older experiences. Typically, you want to provide a greater level of detail for the experiences, and I'm referring to the bullet points here, and those that are relevant to the job that you're applying. You're going to have start and end dates on each experience. Usually that's going to include at least a month and year. This is one thing that is very different than what you may include on a resume to a private employer, is you're going to have the number of hours worked per week. That is something that I would include on a federal resume. You also might be having your supervisor's name for your different roles and positions that you've had as well. And then with your experience, that part can be written in either paragraph format or a bullet point format. My recommendation, and this is more so just from experience and the way that it reads, is much easier for someone to read bullet points versus having to read necessarily just a big bulky paragraph. Bullet points help their eyes flow down the page. So it's just more so of an ease of reading is why I'm suggesting doing bullet points, but that's not a requirement at all that you have to do on the federal resume. And we'll talk more, and I'll show you some samples as well. So for the experience points, or the job experiences, this is a sample of how it may look. And I'm only just showing you two small experiences. I'm going to show you a much fuller version in a little bit of the resume. But as you see here, how it's set up, it has the employer name, position title here, location, where you're doing the position at. And I put here specifically remote because over the last year, many of the students and alumni that I've been working with have done their experiences in a remote capacity. So I think it's important for you to show that you have that ability to potentially, do a job in a remote capacity if it need be, never knowing how times might change and what might happen. That could be the reality, or even a position may start in a remote capacity and maybe change to an in-person situation. The period and time that position is being held, and you were doing the role, and then this is where the experience points are coming in. And again, I'll detail more of this. I just wanted to show you kind of what this may be looking like as far as structure. So some information that you all may be aware of, and some that you may not be, but I wanted to go over a little bit of kind of like, hey, this is kind of what to include and maybe what shouldn't be included. So going down to what to include first, you really want to think about all of your experience, whether they be jobs, internships, volunteer experience, paid, unpaid, whatever that is. You want to think about any of that kind of experience that, based off of the position description, the JOA, you would be showing relevant qualifications and skills. Okay, that level of experience, the examples, that's something that you want to be able to detail out to the employer. Of course, your education, so majors, minors, study abroad, even relevant coursework is something that you might want to include on the federal resume. Another piece that you may not have done before with a private employer is actually certifications. Within the federal resume and how the federal government evaluates candidates, your level of experience in regards to time frame, in regards to training, in regards to those certifications, all can kind of come into play, not only for getting qualified to interview, but also potentially at what pay level you come in at. So you want to be thinking about things like, okay, what certifications that I have that are relevant? And this could be and we had another session where someone asked this, would like a LinkedIn learning, something, course that you did in the certification you got there be something that matches. Yeah, that's something that I would definitely want to potentially showcase and put on my resume, again, as it's relevant. So those certifications, your skills, your language, any kind of technical training, applications or programs that you may know how to use, any specialized training, again, going into that same kind of thing. Have you been doing any specialized training that's relevant from a former job, something that you even did on your own and you gotten some kind of certification or have some kind of licensure with that? That's kind of stuff you want to showcase. And then of course, professional references. Now, when you're looking at what not to include, and the reason I put this up here is because, at one point in time, a social security number was something that was kind of a standard thing that people would put on a federal resume. This day and age, no, just because of security concerns, that's not something that you're going to include in the federal resume. You're not going to have a photo, any kind of sensitive or classified information that the government may have that you don't want to show. Personal information, age, gender, et cetera. There is actually, legislation and regulations that say you cannot put this stuff on a resume, and you can't, an employer can't use this stuff to evaluate you because of discrimination laws and such. So those are things that you don't want to include on this. And these are all actually directly off of OPM and USA Jobs website. So if you're not sure about these or don't remember, you can always access this information and say, okay, what shouldn't go on here? So let's kind of talk about how to develop these experience points, because I've been stressing and I've been saying how important these are in making sure you detail these things out. So to effectively demonstrate the points, I think it's three kind of areas that are, I guess, most key, or things that you need to make sure you're having within the points as it's relevant. So first, with experience, I look at experience in two ways: the amount of experience, meaning how long, and then the level, meaning how in depth. So if you look at the amount, how long, example could be something like you led or managed a team of 10 executive board members over a 3-year period. Okay, so with that, I'm telling you, well, I was doing this over this long of a period. I'm kind of hitting on the level two and talking about using keywords. I led and managed a team of 10 executives. So you're hitting on that time frame. How long was I involved in this? How in depth was I doing it? The level, going into how depth again. Something could be such as being a project manager versus being just a general team member. Well, the project manager or the lead, coordinator or whatever, it's telling you right there, it's probably more in depth than just being just a general member of the team. You may have more responsibilities. So that maybe is more in depth. Another example could be, say, in your internship experience, you were working alongside organizational senior leaders. Now that right there might have a more responsibility for you to be, more in-depth type of work, because you were working with these seniors and because you were doing, work that's, at that higher level versus if at a lower level. So that's something that you want to be thinking about, like, how can I shape my points to make sure I'm hitting on the amount, going in how long, and going in how in depth. The other critical piece, and the third kind of thing I would make sure you put in your points, is the accomplishment piece. So this addresses how well you did something, and it generally answers the questions for why should an employer hire you over someone else. If you think about it like this, if you were in a position before and you did the role, but you didn't do it well, you're going to be someone I'm less likely to want to interview or hire versus someone who's really demonstrating how much they made a positive impact with that employer, how well, not only them doing the work, but how well they did it. And so with that accomplishment piece, usually it answers in that you can answer who was impacted, what were the cost savings? So that could be a way to show kind of an accomplishment if you help save the company or organization money. Did you exceed deadlines? Did you meet and exceed those deadlines that you were working with? Did you receive any type of awards or recognitions? Or what changed or what improved based off of the work that you did in regarding to your duties and tasks? You did this and you made this positive impact or helped change something or helped improve the process or whatever that may be. That's a strong way of demonstrating accomplishments, or I like to call it also impact. So in your experience points, details really matter. So you want to make sure you're tailoring your resume. So I highly recommend trying to tailor versus sending out the same exact resume to each federal job you apply for. Now, it might not be significantly different every single resume because if positions are similar, they have a similar level of qualifications. If you're looking for similar type of work, you might not have to completely change that resume, but it does benefit you to actually take the time to look to see, well, how can I tailor, how can I tweak this for this particular position versus another position? So, and that really comes back to also looking at the specific requirements, qualification, and responsibilities of that position and what they're asking for. So I put this 3 times because I'm trying to emphasize it, but keywords, keywords, keywords. These really do matter. And not just putting in random words, but actually putting them in within context. So when you were doing these particular tasks or things within that role that you are showcasing. So your resumes and the federal resumes are reviewed by real people, but some agencies also use automated systems to review applicants' resumes. So if an agency is usually using these systems, usually the automated review will occur first, and then a manual review will be done by a real person. So typically a human resource specialist or somebody in that similar type of role. Okay, so this is your way of kind of making sure you're matching to the organizations or the particular positions KSA, so knowledge, skills, and abilities, and the experience within the job requirements. So it's important to make sure that you're identifying what those keywords are within the position description and making sure that you are trying to incorporate those in your experience points as you're detailing and talking about things, again, within context though, and not just putting random words. It has to still make sense. You should make sure that you're highly showcasing your strengths. So when it's appropriate, include those quantifiable accomplishments, include numbers, include the percentages, the dollar amounts, etc. Those are key ways of quantifying things. People can easily, see if you helped increase something by 20% or 30% by the work. That's a clear indication of an impact that you potentially have made with that employer. You may want to exclude experience that is not relevant based on the job duties or based upon transferable skills that you're trying to demonstrate to that employer. So I'm not telling you all to just say, hey, details matter, you got to put everything in. You don't want to do that. You do still need to make an evaluation to see, well, how is this relevant? How can I demonstrate that it's relevant? So you do have to be somewhat strategic with how you evaluate your experiences and seeing, are they fitting? As I said before, you want to use plain language as much as you can, and avoid acronyms. A lot of times people put acronyms. Those acronyms might not be known by the employer that you're applying for the particular position. So I would rather you, kind of being safe, spell it out. And then if you need to, spell it out and put the acronym with it versus just putting the acronym. Because there's certain industries and terms where certain things are, okay, people understand, they know what that means. You're not necessarily sure how they're going to view that. So I would always try to spell things out. But then if you need to, you can put the acronym with it to kind of cover both bases. Proofread your resume thoroughly. I know that is kind of common sense over the most part, but you'd be surprised how many resumes I look at with students and they've looked over it, but they still have grammatical errors or spelling errors or punctuation errors or whatever it may be. Just make sure you're taking that time to really review. You do not want any reason for the employer to say, nope, we're not going to give this person an interview. And that kind of stuff can happen. A lot of times employers look for reasons to disqualify candidates versus, hey, you're qualified, we want to bring you on. So spelling errors and grammatical errors, make sure you're proofreading extensively. And I always recommend have someone that you trust. It could be a career advisor, it could be a friend, someone you know that writes well, someone you know who can do resumes very well, to review your resume in detail before applying. You know, really think about somebody you can trust that would, you know, look over with, you know, a very thorough eye and be very critical of what you're putting in there. So I wanted to show you a couple examples of these could be points potentially that would go under in experiences. So utilize Facebook and Twitter to promote, you know, community events, increase the congresswoman's social media followers by more than 350%. That's a clear indication right there. I was trying to put in and see, hey, this is how I made an impact, in putting percentage numbers in here. Develop relationships with local customers and local organizations, develop advanced skills, analytical functions of Facebook and Twitter, and use these to improve the online constituent and community outreach. See, that's a much more in-depth kind of point there than what you may put for another type of resume. And it's clearly demonstrating that kind of impact or that accomplishment piece. Same thing with the second, train 10 new servers. I'm giving you particular numbers in there. I'm talking about how kind of in depth. I did 10 servers versus doing just one server, and so on and so forth. But you can see there of how much more you're going into depth with some of the points and making sure you're hitting on the experience, the amount, the level, and the accomplishment piece. It does take some time, but practice, and as you work on your resume and getting these points out, it trust me, is going to benefit you as you search for federal and apply for federal positions. So next, let's talk about this kind of strategic process with reviewing the job announcement. So these are the steps that I would recommend, and this is actually what OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, recommends as the steps to do. But you first need to really take a thorough eye and review and understand the job requirements. So you really need to sit down and read through the whole entire posting. Make sure you're reading in the way that you're looking at the requirements. Do you meet those requirements? If you meet them, are you going to move forward with applying, or are you not going to move forward with applying based off of the position? And you don't have to necessarily be in a position where you're the perfect candidate and then you have every single thing they're looking for. You at least want to make sure you're meeting what are those minimum requirements for hiring, because they're going to really look at that too. And if you're not, you know, you think about, do you want to waste your time, or do you want to take the time in a sense to apply for that versus looking for another position that better fits what you're looking for and potentially what you're qualified for. So you do need to really take the time to review and evaluate it. As you're reviewing and going through, if you thought, okay, I'm going to move forward with this, take that time to identify what the keywords and phrases are from the requirements and experience listed in the JOA. Okay. I do a method where either if I'm printing it out or if I'm copying the whole job announcement, putting into a Word document, but go through a process of highlighting through what are those keywords, what are those key phrases that I'm pointing out in regards to what this position is looking for or what they want as far as past experience. Then you're going to make sure you're aligning what they've said there with your own experience. So I even take those highlighted pieces, keywords and phrases, put them on the resume that I'm developing, and then make sure that in my experience points that I am hitting on those same keywords or those same phrases or those same skills within my bullet points. So I'm making sure I'm clearly matching my experience and accomplishments, what they said they're looking for, as much as you possibly can. So there's a kind of a rigorous process. It's just that point of you want to make sure you're clearly matching as much as possible what they say they're looking for, because that's how they're evaluating you. I want to show you a sample of a resume. That way you can see kind of how it would fully look. So if you're looking at this screen here, you should be seeing basically a federal resume format. And this is actually, if you're using the USA Jobs Federal Resume Builder, this is basically what it pops out if you were to print out your resume. Now, the Federal Resume Builder has you do everything online, and it's basically an online version. You don't necessarily need to print it out because you're sending everything online. But this is essentially of what it would look like. So formatting wise, it's much different from a more traditional version of a resume, and it's much longer as far as the points. So I'm just giving you this example to kind of visualize and see this is what how much longer it would be because you're going into so much detail, including other things like supervisors' names, hours per week, and when you're doing those particular positions. This one version even has it where you're putting in, if you see here, areas of particular, I guess, subject matter areas, like, hey, I'm doing administrative support, I'm doing constituent and community relations, and that's making up 50% of the job. You don't have to do the resume like that, but sometimes that can help you to better align yourself and kind of organize the information so the employer can clearly see, oh, this position is entailing these areas, and this is how I've demonstrated and done those particular things. Going down further to education, language skills, references, etc. So all that additional information there. So I just wanted you all to see an example of what that would kind of look like within a federal resume. Now, one thing also to think about is that most of the federal agencies use USAJobs, but sometimes they don't, more so for internship opportunities. I've seen a number of internships sometimes where they're not posted on USAJobs, but that particular agency or department may have it on their website. So with that, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to use the federal resume kind of format for those. You may be able to do more so of a hybrid between a traditional one-page resume and kind of the federal resume that may be something like 2 pages or so, but you're able to put that in a more traditional format, but still can have some of those details there. It may not have to include every single thing that you may be including. And these are usually internships that are not part of a specific program, like a pathways program, which I'll talk more about in a little bit, but just know that there could be opportunities where you would find federal positions, internships, typically on an organization's or agency's website versus on USAJobs. Now, speaking about USAJobs, I'm not sure of the population here and if everybody's familiar with what this is. So I'll talk a little bit about what it is and then how to kind of navigate it. So USAJobs is the federal government's executive branch's online employment system, which provides basically, in a sense, worldwide job vacancy information, employment information. You can actually put in job applications through here, as well as access any kind of forms that you may need to provide when you're applying for federal positions. It's typically updated every business day, and it has this very wide, large database of job opportunities. So it's a pretty robust website. And from my own personal experience, it can be kind of overwhelming at first when you first start using it. But as you play around the site, you use it more, it does get easier to kind of navigate. OPM, Office of Personnel Management, it really made a lot of updates to it. So it's much more user-friendly than it used to be. It had previous iterations that were very clunky, didn't really work that well. It's by far leaps better now than what it has been before in the past. One of the main kind of still criticisms that we get about USAJobs, and I hear this from applicants all the time, and I also hear from sometimes the employers, is that the process still does take quite a bit of time with, the whole evaluation process, you looking at positions, you searching, you applying, and then in a sense having to wait and hear back to see what your status is and are you moving to the next step. That oftentimes can deter applicants. However, I really do encourage you, if you're serious and you're looking for federal positions, keep moving forward, be patient through that process. It does take time. And even that may come because of security clearances. So it's a process, but just keep diligent and keep moving forward with it. So here's the website. This is basically that landing page that you will see if you go onto USAJobs. When you first get in there, I do recommend that you create an account and set up a profile. Now, you do not need to have a profile to actually just go in there and search for jobs. I do it I have a profile, but I go up here pretty much frequently, just daily, and just as I'm looking for jobs, as I'm walking a student through an appointment and kind of showing them how to navigate it. I don't log in every time to do that. So you can search for jobs without having to log in. But to apply for any positions, it does require you to have an account and to have that profile created. So that's why I say go ahead and do it and create that account. And then you can get there 2 ways, by hitting create profile, or you can hit sign in. It'll take you to this screen and you can go ahead and create a profile from there. So let's talk about kind of getting your resume on USAJobs. So you have the option to basically upload your resume. It has all these different formats that you can do. I recommend trying to keep it towards a Word document or a PDF. There could be a reason why you want to do it as a JPEG. I don't see a reason why. So I recommend the PDF or Word document format for uploading. And this is your own personal one. So you could basically create your own version of the federal resume yourself in a Word document or Pages or whatever you use, and then upload that document onto your USA Jobs profile. The next option is actually to use the federal resume builder, which is what I was mentioning earlier. And I'll take you through what that looks like. So when you use the federal resume builder, it's a very simple, very easy process. It has kind of prompts and it will take you through each step in that process to basically create and spit out that federal resume, including all those different areas that I kind of showed you on that sample resume. I do recommend setting aside adequate time to complete this. So if, say, you're searching and you're finding a position you want to apply for, you want to kind of have already done this, especially say if you're tight on the deadline and when the position's about to close. It does take time to go through each thing to make sure you're including your information. So give yourself adequate time to complete this and get this done. This is the recommended option from OPM to do this. And when you're applying for federal positions, some agencies actually do require it for their job applications. I've seen that before in JOAs where they say you must have the federal resume or use the federal resume builder to apply. Not all of them say that, but I have seen that from some agencies. I just recommend it's good. Go ahead and have this up there just to have it if you need to use it. Because you can do a combination of actually both. So you can have a personally crafted resume up there, as well as you can have that USA resume builder version of your resume. And the reason I'm telling you that is because it has actual multi-document capacity. So you can have up to 5 resumes in USA Jobs on your profile. So that makes it pretty much easy if you have, hey, I'm applying for multiple types of positions. Maybe I have a version that's more focused on these skills and this experience versus another version. So you can have 5 resumes and then 10 other type of documents. So this can include things like your transcript. If it's some kind of particular form, maybe you were a veteran and you have to show for veterans preference that you have whatever kind of documentation that they may have. It's a bunch of different forms. Maybe that's that other document. Could be a cover letter. So you have different options of additional documents that you can upload as well. You can only make one resume searchable at a time though. And if it is searchable, your profile will also be searchable. So it's an important piece to make sure you're fully completing your profile because employers could use this as a way, your federal employers could use this as a way of searching you. So just make sure you have that profile completely filled out, putting in your types of job preferences, any types of hiring path, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, as far as, what you are eligible for. That stuff you want to make sure you're clearly filling out in the profile. So going through the resume builder, these are taking you kind of through the steps here. So the first part usually that's going to get you to fill out is your education. I put little arrows here because I want you to take notes of all of the required fields and make sure you have all those required fields filled out. Another piece here is you look on the bottom left on the education section here, the part that has the relevant coursework, licensures, and certifications. Honestly, this is a part that a lot of people kind of omit or, don't put much in. I do strongly urge you to think about how you can use this section as a way to boost your resume, especially for current students or recent graduates regarding your coursework you have taken. I looked at some of the numbers from some of the people attending here and had a lot of master's students, even for your master's level courses. Make sure, think about what courses that you've taken that you can use here. Again, they're using all of this information to make a decision about, are you qualified? And sometimes your academic courses, the research you've done, the particular knowledge you may bring from that, maybe it was a type of skill specifically that you have from training from a class, that can make you more qualified or better fit the qualifications that they have stated for the position that they're looking for. So that's an important piece. If you're an alumni and graduated, think about any licensures you have, any certifications. Have you done any kind of other significant trainings or things like that that you can include here? Think about ways to include those things into your USA Jobs, your federal resume. And next, looking at the work experience. At that bottom there, that section that's circled in red, that experience and accomplishment, that's the place where you need to include those sample experiences and those accomplishments, and really take that, get 5,000 characters, utilize all 5,000 characters as much as you can, as much as it's relevant, to make sure you're completely filling that kind of stuff out, and demonstrating your skills and experience. So next, you'll have the professional references. You'll be able to put that in there. One pro tip, you should be doing this for any job application, not just for the federal resume or federal jobs, but make sure that you have received permission from the person or persons you're going to be submitting your references for. I've had many times I've gotten calls for reference checks, had no idea the person even put me down as a reference, and it's honestly kind of annoying. So just get that person's permissions first. It doesn't necessarily maybe have to be for every single job. Maybe you tell them, hey, I'm in the job hunt first process, I'm in the internship process. Would you be willing to be a reference for all of my applications? And ask them, would they be able to serve in that role for you? And then if you get an inkling that you may be getting an interview, and potentially they may be reaching out to your references, you may want to give them a heads up about that specific position, so they're aware of what they may be getting called for. And then the additional qualifications, I consider this kind of like a catch-all for anything that you maybe didn't have a chance to include in any other section of the federal resume. So that can go into that, potentially that job-related training, if it's something specific that you have there. Of course, language skills, organizations. And then you have, if you look at the bottom, completely any additional information that you want to include. So really, if something didn't fall into one of those other categories or sections, this is where you may want to include that kind of information. So make sure you're, again, clearly filling these things out. Okay, searching for federal jobs. It's a process. There are a bunch of different ways that you can use the USA Jobs website to look for positions. Every job, JOA, job opportunity announcement, has an ID number. So that's a way to search positions. You can search it per agency, department, specific job titles, locations. USA Job actually covers anything in the United States and anything across the world. So you can be looking anywhere. And then sometimes positions are actually in multiple places. It may be one position, but it could be in 10 different cities across the United States, that they may be, a location that you could potentially be working at with that role. You can search about occupational series codes. That is a bit more advanced, but you can actually look and see every type of job and job area has a series code that it might fall under. And if you're looking specifically in the series code of type of work, that could be another way to kind of narrow down and search for positions. And that's easily accessible. You can see each of the series codes on the website and see what the series code is aligning with. Again, a more advanced way of searching, but there's also another way to do it. And then there's another number of advanced filters and things that you can use to narrow it down. Because if you just go in there and just put, for example, Washington, D.C., you're going to see a ton of positions, and it may not be as easy for you to kind of navigate through that. It may give you way more things that you're not interested in, and it take up too much of your time. So you want to be efficient with your time as you're searching, but you have a lot of different methods in how you can do that. And then you have a number of different federal hiring paths. So you can see this on the website as well, but they have detailed information on what each path is, what it means, and what the eligibility requirements are for those paths. Okay, so you have positions that are just open to the public. You have positions that are only available for current federal employees to apply for. So you already have to be working within the federal government in a position to even be eligible. I know they do sometimes people who are getting a promotion and they're stepping up from one GS pay level to a next GS pay level. And then they have to find a new position to be able to actualize that promotion. Well, that might be under a certain type of hiring path that you have to go through in certain positions that you would have to apply for. They have a thing called veterans and military spouses. They have a thing called veterans preference that you could use to apply if you are a veteran. And it's documentation and things that you would have to submit with that, but that's another hiring path. For many of you who are on here, student and recent graduates. So student and recent graduates is probably going to be one of the most popular ones for the population of people that I primarily meet with. But there's a pathways program. That's the federal government executive branch official kind of internship program, or entry level kind of program, if you would think of it that way. And actually within pathways, it's three separate programs. You have presidential management fellows, PMF, and that program is for those with advanced degrees or in the process of completing that kind of said advanced degree. It actually is a pretty good opportunity. It's very prestigious. It's very competitive as well to get this. It's a significant process that goes even beyond just the federal hiring process. And you get a lot of benefits with that. One of it is it's a 2-year appointment into an entry-level federal job. So sometimes that's very attractive for people. I won't go into everything about this program because it is very quite in depth. My colleague Robertson George actually is a lead advisor for AU for PMF, and he does a series of workshops to help prepare applicants. I think he's actually starting to do some programs, some workshops this month, I believe. If you go into Handshake, you should be able to look the events and be able to see if they have any PMF sessions. He does a series of them throughout, I think, starting July through August, and then the beginning definitely of the fall semester. So if that's something that you're interested in, again, these are people with advanced degrees, so graduate degrees, or recently received a graduate or some other advanced degree, not necessarily undergraduate programs. They do have a recent graduates pathways program. So you have to be within 2 years of earning your degree to be eligible for this program. So that would be somebody who is from undergrad within 2 years or has a grad degree within 2 years, you're eligible. And then they just have their regular internship program, and that would usually be for people who are currently enrolled in an undergraduate or graduate degree program. So that's a really good way. So looking at, you can filter positions based upon student and recent graduates. Senior executives, which I don't think anybody here would be. They have also a pathway for people with individuals with disabilities, and that's typically under Schedule A hiring. You have Peace Corps and AmeriCorps, they have a hiring path, and then you have a number of other special hiring authorities. So there are many different ways, but just know that there are different options that you can look at as far as federal hiring paths. Okay, this next screen goes into just kind of showing you, if you were to go and do a search on USA Jobs, this is what that screen that you would primarily see. You have the different positions, the dates that the positions are open. These little icons will connect with the different hiring paths. You can also put in keywords to search and narrow down positions. So say if you're looking for program analyst, you can put that as a way to filter in and search for positions. So looking through here, oh, excuse me, sorry. Also here, these are your various hiring paths. So you can easily look through here to see what those different hiring paths are. I'll pop in and show you all something else here. So you can see those different hiring paths and you're able to select those. If you scroll down here, you can also search it by a number of different ways. You can search it by how much they pay, what the GS pay level is. You can search them that way. You can also go into specific departments or agencies. And then this is what I was referring to as regards to the series code. You can look at the different series codes to see, hey, this is a position that's in, if I'm in electrical engineering, or I'm in computer science, or if I'm in, whatever that particular area, budgeting, management, you can search it there. So they have all these different series codes. So next thing you want to think about doing is that reviewing the job opportunity announcements. And these are really the most important sections that I recommend that you really take that time to look at. The duties, the requirements, which has those qualifications, that experience, what kind of education, et cetera, that you will need to qualify. You have a section that talks about how you will be evaluated. So what are the types of things that are going to have you do? Is it going to be some type of questionnaire that you have to fill out? Is there going to be interview process? Whatever, it's going to be looking at all those different things. How to apply. You have a occupational questionnaire that usually they have after most positions. They give you an option to be able to basically do a preview to see what those questions are. They're pulling from the job opportunity announcement. So if they're saying you need to have a minimum of this education, this, and this, whatever those things may be, they usually ask you that questionnaire, and that's used as a way to really screen out a lot of applicants that apply for stuff and they are not anywhere near qualified sometimes. So they use that as a way to kind of screen out people. So it's important that you answer these questions truthfully and honestly about what your level is with that, but just know that they use this as a tool to kind of really weed out people early in that process if you're not really meeting some of those requirements, those minimum requirements they're looking for the position. Read the entire job announcement before you even start applying, and make sure you take that time, really sit back, really review the complete job opportunity announcement, because you want to make sure you have a clear understanding of what they're looking for in this position and what it entails. And here's a sample of what that would look like. This is for a policy analyst position, something that I pulled from a while back, but using this screenshot, you can see here, you see the announcement, you see the different sections, the overview, locations, duties, requirements, required documents, etc. Make sure you pay attention to the open and closing dates as well, because you need to make sure you're getting your application in by that time frame. So hiring agencies state the qualifications and requirements in the JOA. So you must meet those requirements to be considered for the job. You can either click on the different tabs here or scroll down and you'll be able to see the rest of the sections. You see that you have the apply button here. Another thing on here that's really important is with this time frame. So typically, if it's a private employer and I'm working with a student or alumni and talking about applying for a private position, I'd say, hey, as soon as you see the position, apply, because you never know when they're actually going to start to review applicants. With federal government, take a little bit of a different approach. You want to make sure that you're getting your application in by whatever the deadline is, by 11:59 p.m. on that closing date. Okay. This is Eastern Standard Time. So that's if you're all on the West Coast, Midwest, wherever you're at, and you're at a time difference or another place in the world, it's Eastern Standard Time. So by regulation, the federal government is required to review any applicant that gets their application in before the closing period of time. The other piece, though, is sometimes they'll put in the announcement this little kind of window right here, this thing that I put, it says the position will close if after they've received 50 applications. Yeah, I see this a lot of times with State Department. They are, notorious for doing this when they put out announcements. I've even seen them say the first 25 applicants. They're trying to limit the applicant pool. So that's another important piece to say. As soon as you see it, and if they have that, make sure you get that application in very quickly. After applying, a hiring agency uses basically the information in your resume to verify if you have the required qualifications, stated in the JOA. Once they determine, who is minimally qualified, the agency may use kind of other means of assessments or kind of structured interviews or testing to determine now who's best qualified. Okay, so it does make sense to take the time to really sit down and review the JOA before you apply. And I want to go in one position to kind of show you some examples. So if you see here, you see the whole breakdown: summary, duties and responsibilities, requirements, qualifications. This here, they're going into the kind of what the different, because some roles may be, hey, it's a GS5 to a GS11. Well, what does the qualifications that put me at a GS5 level? What is the qualifications that put me at a GS7 level with education and years of experience, et cetera? So you see there, it's pretty lengthy, and I haven't even opened it down. If you hit read more, these drop down and are much more detailed. Even gives information about security clearance. Some federal positions have security clearance levels. Some of them have just basic background check and don't require you to have a higher level of security clearance. Required documents, what you'll need to apply, transcripts, resumes, if you have a questionnaire, et cetera. Then it goes into benefits and so forth. So here are some additional resources that I wanted to share with you all. regarding, federal resumes or navigating the USA Jobs portal, I really encourage you all to check out, if you haven't, the gogov.org. That is a website that is ran by the Partnership for Public Service. They're doing a lot of great work with trying to make sure, the public and people are informed about federal government and hiring and practices and processes that they have. I also encourage you all to schedule an appointment if you need further assistance. So with myself, I advise SPA undergrads and graduate students, SIS, SOC, CAS, COGOT, et cetera, all have their career advisors that you all can work with in your respective schools. So I really do encourage you to schedule appointments with us. If you have questions, if you need help with your application and your documents, we're here to do that. Also, if you missed any other webinars in our series that we've been doing, all those are recorded. They're on the Career Center YouTube channel, as this one will be as well by the end of this week, after this session is up. So I encourage you to check out these additional resources. And then one other one too that I want you to look at. Now, this isn't necessarily directly about federal hiring or USA Jobs. It is called GoGov, Government Exec, excuse me. And they have a lot of information about pretty much anything regarding federal government agencies, hiring, different types of legislation that's potentially coming out. If you're really interested in thinking about federal government, this is something that I recommend that you sign up and get on for. They have a newsletter. You can get, I think I get a daily email from them. You can get stuff that comes in breaking news. This is a good way of repository of how I stay up to date too on some of the changes. What are some of the executive orders that are coming out regarding hiring, regarding federal process, whatever it may be. This is a good hub and a place for you to check out. So it's govexec.com. So really good resource that I recommend that you all utilize. Okay. And with that, I'll start taking questions. It looks like we have some questions that are already here. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see these questions. Okay, start with the Q&A. So first question, do you think it is better to add experience that is not relevant on a resume or leave it out completely? I really do recommend that you make sure the experience is relevant in relation to that particular position that you're applying for. So as I was discussing, really reviewing, getting a sense of what are the key requirements, qualifications, and responsibilities, make that assessment to see, does the position align? Not every role you've had may be exactly the same types of job duties. It may be transferable skills more that you're showing. I think you should really critically analyze that and see, hey, are these transferable skills connecting with some of the kind of the core things that they're looking for? So if it's like customer service is a part of the position and role with some of the work that you're going to be doing, communication skills, written or communication, am I hitting on some of that with even a job that may be not exactly the same types of duties, but it's connected? I think when in doubt, I would rather you think of like, how is this transferable, and make sure you're clearly articulating and getting that across about how this could be transferable versus not including it. So you do have to do that evaluation process. Next question, do you recommend that our bullet points in the experience section begin with a verb? Could we capitalize the verb to make it stand out? Yes, I would start your experience points with action verbs, strong action verbs, because those action verbs typically speak to skills. Capitalizing the whole verbs make it sound, I don't think you need to capitalize the whole verb. I think as long as you can, if it's the beginning part of that, capitalize the first letter in it. I don't think you need to capitalize the entire verb necessarily to make it stand out. Yeah. Next question. Regarding job references, if you no longer have contact with a supervisor from a past job, for example, they left the organization, how would you advise handling that on your resume? If you no longer have contact with a supervisor from a past job, for example, they left the organization. Okay. Well, if that person is going to be your job reference, what you can do, if you still don't have a contact person there that you would reach out to, I think it's okay to leave it off if you don't necessarily have a particular supervisor that's still there to get in contact with them. if the person you still have and you still know who that person is, maybe they moved to another place, but you still have their information, you can put them as, hey, this was the supervisor there. If you have a contact phone number that you can put for the location, if you still have that for that particular place that you were working at, put the contact number. Somebody can reach out to them if they needed to do that. If in all you don't really have that information, I think it's okay to leave it off. You're still going to be putting references. You're still going to be putting that information on there. And your references don't necessarily have to be your supervisor. So the references could come from somebody who was a colleague that you work with there, who maybe could talk about your work from that particular experience. So it doesn't always have to be a supervisor. Sometimes supervisors are the best well suited to be that kind of reference, but it doesn't have to be. Okay. I think we also had a question in the chat. Let's see. Let's see. PMS. This was my colleague letting me know that the PMFS sessions aren't scheduled yet. However, please keep an eye on Handshake. So yes, those aren't scheduled in there yet, but I know my colleague Robert St. George is going to be doing them. He usually starts in the summertime. So they're not there yet, but kind of keep an eye out if you were interested and wanted to look at PMF at all. Okay, great. We still have a few minutes remaining, so if anybody has any more questions at all that I can answer, please feel free to put those into the chat or the Q&A. So not seeing any more questions, but I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. Those who provided, got another question, sorry. Will the slides be available after the webinar? Slides, no, not specifically, but I will have, the webinar is recorded and will be on the YouTube, on the Career Center YouTube by the end of this week. No more questions here. Okay. Again, thank you all for your participation. Again, if you have more questions, you're not sure about something, feel free. You can contact me directly. You can contact your career advisors directly if you have more questions. But I appreciate your participation here. Take it easy, everyone.